Hello everyone, my name is Miles Anderson and welcome to today's version of Inside Local. Today we'll be looking at link building for local businesses and discussing link building strategies, the tactics that our guest speakers use to kind of build links for their businesses that they work with, some of the pitfalls that people can fall into when link building, and essentially by the end of this webinar you will walk away with a hatful of tips, tactics and insights that will make you a better SEO and a better link builder, either for your own business or for your clients. So I wanted to introduce, we actually have three panelists on today, although one of them is struggling slightly with some technical issues, so he will be joining us very, very soon. But we have Casey Merez, who's the founder of Juris Digital, Matt Lacuesta, who is the director of Earned and Owned Media at Location 3, and Fernando Angulo, who works at SEM Rush. Casey, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction to the audience about yourself?
Sure. Well, yeah, my name is Casey Merez. I'm the founder of Ethical SEO Consulting and Juris Digital. Primarily, I work with law firms, so really competitive link building and competitive industries. And I've been doing local SEO for the past over 10 years now. I've written a lot on the Moz blog and have contributed to the local ranking factor studies over the years. But yeah, local SEO is kind of my jam, and I love competitive link building.
That's great. Well, Casey, you've been on InsideLocal before, so thank you very much for giving up your time and expertise for us again. I look forward to hearing more about the tactics you use in the very competitive niche of legal SEO. Matt, over to you. Please give a little introduction.
All right, thanks, Miles. So my name is Matt Lacuesta, and I'm the director of Earned and Owned here at Location 3, based out of Denver, so not too far from Casey. And I too have been doing SEO for just about a decade now. And our big focus here is working with enterprise clients and franchise type clients. So whether you've got 50 locations or 5,000 locations around the country or around the world, we want to help you improve your local visibility. And that's going to be through, we do link building, SEO, and also like Google My Business Management and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about link building today. So we've got a lot of good stuff. I know we had a couple chats beforehand and everyone had some really good notes. So I'm excited to get into it today. Yeah,
that's great. Well, it's wonderful to have you both on because you've got a kind of wealth of experience at different ends of the kind of industry spectrum and also the kind of scale spectrum as well. So looking forward to hearing how you both approach the kind of the topic or the tactic of link building with your own individual kind of companies. So a little bit of stuff for those listening in. So behind the scenes sort of admin stuff. If you've got any questions, put them in the Q&A box. We have Colin Nielsen from Sterling Sky, as forever, boldly answering the questions and doing a grand job of that, I'm sure. And we also have Matt Coughlin, who is the head of customer success of BrightLocal, also answering questions. So please put any questions that you've got in there. If you want to take part in a kind of discussion, please do this on Twitter and use the hashtag localbizlinks. We usually have a pretty active kind of discussion happening during the webinar and afterwards, so please take part in that. And for anyone who has to slip away early before the end of it, there is a video and recap available. It'll be on the BrightLocal blog on Friday, so please look out for it there. And if you signed up for this, you'll get an email notifying you of when that is available. So, guys, why don't we jump in first question? Let's go to you first, Casey. What are your top 3 link building tactics for local businesses?
Got it. Well, depends on how much you want me to go into this, but from a high level standpoint, what's that?
Lots.
Okay. Yeah, so from a high level standpoint, definitely event link building, community events, sponsorships, and then also something that a local business can use today is giveaways, which I'll talk about in a little bit.
Okay, great. So that was events then. What's the second one?
Yeah, so event link building, definitely sponsorships. I gave more than 3, unfortunately. And then community type PR type events, which I definitely wanted to dive in a little bit deeper on, that any business can do to get news exposure for link building.
Okay, we'll come back to that, Casey. So I'd like to go deeper into that during this sort of part of the webinar. But Matt, over to you. What are your kind of top 3, and we'll circle around to get more detail on these.
Yeah, so like I said, we deal with a lot of locations that have a pretty big footprint around the country, and a lot of times we get brand mentions that we don't even know about. So I think that's a really quick, easy place to start is just following up on your brand mentions. If you have a big footprint, you don't know what people are talking about all the time. So it's a great way to identify some opportunities to get some links there. Next, I think ancillary services. So for example, say you're a hotel and you're close to a convention center, or you host banquets and conferences, and you work with other vendors in the area, taking advantage of those relationships that you have with other businesses locally and services that are related to your industry. And then finally, I think events are a great thing for, Casey mentioned. I also like to take that for not necessarily just like local events, but creating discounts for other locals if you're in a touristy type area, which is really helpful from a small group link building aspect. And then also on the event side, looking at things like not just your normal community type things, but looking for either conferences or like universities hosting parents weekend or hosting college visits, little things like that, at least from like the hotel space or car rental space.
Okay, so you're looking for events that you can support or that you have a service that is relevant to promote alongside an event, like a hotel if you're going to go to a conference in a different city.
Sure, and I definitely all about sponsoring the local 5K in your community and being a sponsor for a baseball team and stuff like that, but also trying to see where you're actually going to be driving some traffic as well, and people are going to utilize the links that you're putting out there.
Fine. Okay, well, we'll talk about kind of objectives and kind of KPIs for links. So anyway, let's kind of keep on this topic and go a little bit deeper. Casey, back to you. Can you give us examples of why and how you build links using events for your legal customers?
Sure. So, well, first, it's just a great way for businesses to really build their brand. So, running a good you want to do, for example, running a webinar like you're doing today, Miles. If you're a law firm, maybe your clientele is small businesses, and so you're hosting a free workshop at this point at your place of business. And then what you want to do is, of course, spread that word so people show up. You're giving away free information, and people are going to attend just for that. So then finding the list of them, submitting to them as many of places for local event submission websites is definitely important. And it's basically the first building block of event link building. You can take this down a rabbit hole, but that's the foundational part, and it's going to provide a lot of value that people are going to want to share. And obviously, they're going to want to find out about it on whatever websites they use to find out what events are going on.
And is there a sort of time restriction element to that in terms of the event? Once the event passes, the link drops off or the promotion drops off?
In some cases, yes, and there's different ways around that. Reoccurring events are one, and event submission sites are a small portion of this. That's what's important. Obviously, you can get listed on local websites within your local area, but when you start getting links that aren't just like automated or automatically published, and you're starting to get them from the Chamber of Commerce and they're talking about you and things like that from other localized websites, you're going to create a lot of value from that.
Okay, so it's not just about building links on event sites. You're creating an event, you're obviously putting it up on an event site to, as platforms that make it available, but you're also doing outreach to drive awareness of that event, which might drive people to attend the event, but also people to kind of link to it that are relevant.
Absolutely, and if you want to put that on steroids, you definitely do some media outreach with that, which I'm happy to cover in a little bit as well.
Okay, great. Matt, you talked about event building as well. Do you do that for your multi-location clients, and how can you do that when you've got a client that's got 1,000 locations? If you're an agency, what's your system for making that work for locations at scale?
So as you can imagine, when you have that many locations, it can become really tedious trying to get really specific links. And sometimes it is necessary just from either some locations are new, they've reflagged and become a new brand, or you've got some places that are just they're struggling, or they need extra help, or they've been really helpful in providing other insight to the locations, and they've been prioritized as a high priority. So we would go a little bit more in depth there, but I think to scale across a lot of businesses, we'd want to take a look at what kind of process we can help develop to give individual locations the resources that they can share with their community. So for example, say you're we do a lot of stuff in the travel space, and say you're a hotel in a specific city, and instead of us going out and reaching out and trying to find all the conferences that are coming to town, looking at the convention center, looking at all the places and other vendors that service these types of events, what we do is provide kind of like a one-sheeter for them to share with everybody else, saying, if you're hosting an event in this city, or for people visiting this event center, here are some really relevant details about the city, as well as how to get to our place, how to with links to their location page, as well as information that's relevant that ties the events together, and actually just helps build the relevance of that location within that geographic area.
So from your perspective, then, it's about giving a toolkit or a sort of a roadmap for sort of link opportunities to the people who are in control of each of those locations.
Yeah, definitely easier said than done, because you don't always get the adoption rate that you would hope for, even though, you know, you try to explain how important it is to your business. But the nice thing about that is when you actually have a small percentage of people who actually do it, and we start collecting data to see, all right, well, look what kind of engagement we're getting here with this stuff, and you start comparing these other locations against others and said, hey, last time we did this, you know, the top 10% of people who did it saw X amount of lift, and then that generally will drive people to want to join that group and see better performance for their location as well.
Yeah, I guess it's partly through proving that it works, and also, you know, that can't lead to sort of competitive jealousy in terms of going, well, I want to, you know, if that location is outperforming me, then I want to make sure that I'm not being kind of left in its wake. That's really interesting, actually, and I'm sure there's a lot of process stuff around, you know, multi-location that we can kind of come to. Back to you, Casey. You talked about sponsorships then. Let's go into some detail on how you utilize that, and also from my outsider's opinion, it sounds incredibly expensive.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's going to add extra budget, but sponsoring like a Little League, like Matt had spoke about, what I'm really looking for, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this too, but is relevance. So locality, that's one, but also, you know, niche related. So if I'm working with a car accident attorney, sponsoring a car club might be something I might be more inclined to do so. And what I'm doing is I'm using drop, you know, site sponsor, and then the city name type of thing. But I'm also looking at, you know, going a little bit further. What's past page 2, 3, 4, 5? Not who's has a million sponsors, because that's another thing too. I think a lot of people spend a lot of money. They're going to say, hey, look at this sponsorship opportunity. It's $1,000, and there's 30,000 other sponsors on this page. You know, how much value are you getting? You really have to look for the gems when you're doing this, and you have to spend the time and do the due diligence to weed through these things to make sure you're going to do the ones that are going to have the biggest benefit to you, pass the most equity to you. And so it does definitely cost some money, but there's also some sponsorships that we've done where we've gotten a lot of free links as well. And that's typically when we partner with a nonprofit organization and then basically offering something of value, a gift in kind, something like that, as opposed to money, and then they reference us on their website. So it's a little bit broader than what most people might think about at first glance.
And is that something that you do within your agency for your clients, or is that like a Matt scenario where you're there to provide an education to the customer and essentially a kind of toolkit that they can implement?
We do it. We're in the weeds. You know, we always are testing what works and what doesn't, and so we're actually doing this stuff.
Okay, that's fascinating. You broke up a little bit. I think you spoke something about, you know, how you identify these opportunities. Are you using kind of controllers within Google to identify opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You know, again, search operators, city plus niche, so in title sponsors, things like that. That's a great way to at least, you know, do that. But I also encourage people, you know, look at Bing too. Look at page 10 of Google. Scrape as many of those results as you can and weed through those. And look at the outgoing links. How many other people have that? And again, if a million other people have it, it may not be worth your while.
Yeah, do you find that it's very competitive, given that it's quite a well-known sort of SEO practice, and also, you know, local businesses use it to build their brand? Do you find it's quite hard to find unique opportunities?
Surprisingly, no, because I think most people say they're doing it and they're not going to do it. And also, it's surprisingly hard to give people free money sometimes.
Okay, you give me some, I don't mind. Matt, you talked about ancillary services, so essentially partnering with businesses that are kind of related to yours, could be suppliers, vendors. Can you give me an example of where you've seen great success in doing that, and why and how it's successful?
Sure. So, you know, obviously, I think, you know, we talked about the hotels and how you would, you know, banquet centers and stuff like that would talk, you know, have links and share about their other vendors in terms of food, drinks, hospitality type people in their space. But some other examples of that would be, for example, like tutoring institutions. Those are all over the country, and we've seen a lot of instances where they talk about on their location pages, they talk about the schools and school districts that they service. But it's just, you know, a list of the pages and whatnot. But I think building that out further to provide that, you know, using that toolkit as kind of a building parental resources for the schools and the school districts to share within their class websites, the school websites, and even like the just the city and county websites, I think is really relevant and helpful too. So that's been a pretty interesting thing, just tying together how the the private business of tutoring actually works within that individual community.
Mm-hmm. And I can see from that scenario that you could have essentially the same resources localized for each location. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the nice thing about that is just the fact that, individual, say, it's a franchise system, and the individual franchisees have a better idea of what's going on within their city, and they know they have those relationships with the schools already. So it makes it a little bit easier to get their foot in the door. They're not just doing some outreach or cold calling to try to, get a link placement.
Do you pitch that to K-12, Matt, or?
That's K-12 and at the college level. It just kind of depends on what types of relationships are already in place and who they're servicing, because those relationships are already in place, and then in most instances they've already been approved by school districts to make that someone that we work with, or someone that is around that we've worked with and we're okay with.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just mentioned that because a lot of times people, when they're thinking about scholarship link building or school, they're always thinking college. But there's a whole K-12 opportunity there that's rarely untouched, but again, a great resource and something that I see very few people take advantage of as far as outreach goes.
Yeah, and one note about that, a lot of people will look at the, when they start thinking about the quality of links, like, oh, we're going to ignore all these links because they're not, above domain, authority 30 or something like that as a threshold. But I've seen a lot of school websites where the domain authority is pretty low because someone in IT built the site. It's more of a directory. There's not a lot to it, but it is relevant. It is there. So a lot of school websites are getting better. But just one of the things to note is just because the domain authority isn't great doesn't mean it's not worth going to if it's relevant to your business and it's local.
Yeah, we will talk about how you evaluate link opportunities, and look beyond the kind of high-level domain authority sort of metrics. So, brilliant. Okay, why don't we kind of move on from there? But that's a wonderful level of detail. Thank you for that. So, next question. Let's go to you, Matt. Obviously, you guys, and I'm presuming you have, I guess, a kind of a priority sort of list, or not necessarily a kind of cookie-cut approach for delivering sort of link building for customers, but you have a kind of go-to strategy you kind of like to execute on either in full or in part for your clients. Why do you believe that your approach to link building delivers results, and why have you honed it down to what it is? What is it about it that you think really delivers success?
So I think Will Reynolds mentioned this at MozCon many years ago, asking the questions of why do you need more links? And it's essentially, you just keep asking questions and you get to the point of you want more visitors, you want more customers, you want to make more money. And I think our process is great because yes, it does add the contextual relevance to you being within a certain location. You're building some link authority, some of that link equity is being passed down into your site, but it's also because we're developing process and putting it in place where it actually drives traffic that is relevant. So it's not just getting a link on the site and then it sits there and nobody looks at it. It's actually, it's providing some value to visitors through the website. And in many instances, it's, we are getting clicks from it. We are getting traffic from these links, they're not just, hey, we built these links and then they're just sitting there. People are coming through. We're tracking either offer codes. We're looking at the kind of traffic that's the referral traffic coming in from those sites. So it's not just like, oh, well, we got you these links and then, that's it. We're going to wipe our hands of it. We got you these links. They're driving traffic, and that traffic is doing X amount of, business on your site.
Okay, great, excellent. And we'll about sort of how you kind of balance some of those kind of performance metrics for link building. Casey. Maybe tell us a little bit about your kind of strategy and how often, when do you have a set strategy, and is it set in stone, or do you just decide which bits to execute on depending on the situation you're at with the customer?
Yeah, my set strategy is we have no set strategy. So it does depend on the customer, depends on the market and the niche as well. Some people that are practicing in an area of law that has no competition isn't going to really even need to focus on this, or a very small locality, but bigger areas, more competitive. So it changes and it depends, but we believe that our approach to link building delivers results for our clients in a lot of different ways too. One of the ways, it depends on the metrics. Like specifically, if I send links to this page, does it increase in rankings? Yes. Okay, cool. But the links that we'd like to build, the ones that are going to have the biggest impact, are the ones that actually help build the business as a brand. So some of the stuff that we do seems pretty crazy at first. And a brand building exercise that we run often in a lot of cities and a lot of holidays are free cab ride reimbursements, where people can mail in, their cab ride on a drinking holiday, a US drinking holiday. And law firms sponsor that because what it does is it gets them in front of a wide audience. It regularly gets picked up by local newspapers. The payout is typically surprisingly low because for whatever reason, not as many people take advantage of it as we like. And that's a metric all by itself. It's building the brand. It's a brand in the community that's the good guy. But then the link benefit from it, we can actually correlate that to different ranking increases. And that's kind of a site-wide signal. But other link building campaigns that might be more specific, when we're getting localized links to local landing pages, we see that impact specifically the rankings, traffic, and click-throughs is something that shouldn't be ignored. Making sure that link is being clicked and people are going through it. That's another quality signal of a valuable link.
But Casey, just for my benefit, for everyone listening in, your typical clients, are they single or multi-location legal practices?
Both. So it depends. Yeah, the most locations we're working with is typically 20, but usually it's single.
Fine. Okay. So when you're looking at a single location versus a 20 location business, how does your strategy differ in terms of where you want the links to go to, and how much, I guess, effort you can afford to give the brand versus an individual location?
Sure. Well, for a single location, we're really taking advantage of the authority of the homepage, but over time too. So if they're opening more offices, that strategy will change very quickly. So most of the links that we get, let's say we're doing that free cab ride campaign, that's actually going to its own page, obviously unrelated, not going to the homepage or that location page, but it's really helping boost that domain authority. So from a foundational perspective, we're doing that across the board.
Okay, and so if you're working with a customer and they say they've got 5 locations and they add another one, does your strategy for an existing established location differ to a new location, or are you just going through the same steps to get them up to the level of the existing locations?
No, it always, unfortunately, it depends, right? And it depends on the market. So, we will change our strategies. And as soon as you're talking about 5 locations, we're definitely doing things way differently, where we do create high value localized landing pages, for lack of a better term.
Okay, and are you looking to drive traffic into the site as a whole, or are you looking to try and really boost the performance of individual location pages once you've got more than, say, 5 locations?
Good question. Really all of the above. We track all of our metrics separately, so we can track conversions, where they're coming from. We're tracking phone calls, chats, emails, click to calls, all that. So yeah, we work to build the brand, but we also really work to drive the performance, because that's the metric we care about most. How much business are we bringing you in? Is that increasing? And can we tie that to the work that we're doing?
Okay, we'll come and talk about that in a minute. Apologies to everyone listening in that Fernando hasn't made a reappearance. Obviously, his technical issues were larger than initially anticipated. So, okay, let's look at the next question then. Matt, you've obviously been in the SEO game a long time. You work with a kind of large established agency, so I'm sure you've seen almost everything that can go wrong with link building. But what do you think most SEOs or even business owners go wrong with link building, even in terms of their perception, their understanding about it, or their execution?
I think just, we've seen a lot of different tactics over the years, and I think kind of going into the people following the trends where, there's more of a system and a process that you're paying into a group to, I share reciprocal links, or you're paying for the opportunity to guest post on other people's websites, or just obviously, nowadays it's a little bit different. We're no longer just writing articles, running it through some software that spins up 5,000 different variations of it and then sending it across the network, which was not fun, but that was what people did a long time ago. But I think the most relevant thing now is when people get hung up on the fact that oh, we just need more links, and they're not really thinking about, where those links are going or how they're acquiring them. They just know that, sometimes a CMO just says, well, we looked at the contract, we say we're going through a link building thing, and we just want to see a graph with lots of links, lots of link growth in the coming year, and then maybe not necessarily looking at the quality or the relevance of that. So I think, not quite understanding exactly what you need. If you go to Fiverr.com and you'll see all these different things for all these people who will build you links for really cheap, and they're not going to do you any good, but a lot of people don't actually understand that. They just know, oh, that's a thing, so it must, because it's a thing, it must work really well. And then also I think the other thing is too, there's also a big network of people who talk about link building online, and their big focus is, we're going to build you tens of thousands of links over the coming weeks. And they really push the velocity and a really big push. And sometimes it's for negative SEO purposes, but it's kind of on the black hat side of things, where people are building links across these networks just using software. They're not doing any outreach, not building anything manually. It's just going out, hitting a couple buttons onto software. And I went to a conference recently up in Breckenridge at SearchCon, and there was a black hat panel, and they just showed us, in the matter of an hour-long talk, we saw them build, a few thousand links to a site. So, just the fact that people can do that. Obviously, Google knows that that's a thing, and they try to push on it, but they haven't found all of those networks. So people are still doing it and seeing some success, but it's not going to be long-standing. So I think that's another thing. It's easy for somebody who's local that just hears from their local SEO person. Maybe you're not in a big city, you're in a small town, and the one person that is near you that you'd want to work with happens to do that kind of link building, but you don't know any better. So I think just being wary of the types of link building is really important too.
Great, thank you. That conference sounds intriguing. I'd love to have sort of been in the audience for that. Did they manage to sort of show any evidence of it working there and then, or?
Yeah, they actually do a couple different case studies of how it's been used from a negative perspective, but then also how it's actually helped people rise through the ranks for legitimate terms, legitimate businesses. So it is really interesting. So that's they always do a black hat panel at SearchCon in Breckenridge every spring.
Interesting. Have you guys, by the way, had any clients have ever been the target of negative SEO from link building?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Really?
Yeah, we've seen something interesting recently too. So Casey, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, in the legal space, you get a lot of competitive people. I would say a lot less over the past few years, but back when manual penalties were more prevalent and algorithmic penalties, yeah, we would have people just hammer automated, thousands of links, and it did have an impact, unfortunately. So we had to, in the past, be a lot more proactive about that. I would say less so now, for sure.
Okay. I'll ask why that is. Matt, you had an experience as well.
Yeah, just recently, starting in February, we saw a client where there was a big influx of links coming into their root domain, and I think it was maybe about 10,000 links, and they all happened within maybe about a 2-month window. But they were, things were nice and slow and steady, and then all of a sudden there's this big spike, and they're all part of, we've identified a couple different networks where they're all pretty similar and putting up the same type of homepage and stuff like that. And some of them are scraper sites, and Google always says that or Google says now that we understand that bad links happen, so we're just going to ignore them. But when they start seeing that velocity and that big increase, they're saying, well, someone's trying to game the system. The first person they're going to look at is the company. They're like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like on those Dateline murder mystery shows. It's like the first suspect is always the husband. So in this instance, the first suspect is always going to be the company. So you don't want to be on that side of things.
What was your strategy for combating that, Matt?
So that is an instance where you would actually go through the disavow process, because I think that just the fact that there's so many of those poor links coming in at one time, you actually want to go in and say, hey, we understand that these are part of our backlink profile. We're trying to remediate them to help you, Google, understand that we're not trying to game the system and that these are just links that could potentially be harming us and giving users a bad experience. So that is an instance where we would generally do that. But for the most part, if you don't see any effects of having a few poor backlinks in your profile, then we wouldn't always recommend going through the disavow process. But in instances where it's a really big spike and seems really obvious, we definitely would.
Okay. Casey, you mentioned that you don't see so many penalties these days. Why do you think that is?
I think Google's better at what they say or claim that they're doing, which is devaluing links more so than penalties, specifically in the legal space, because there was a while there, maybe it was 2013, 2014, where manual penalties were just rolling out to firms that had really unnatural link profiles, and that's just, we're not even really helping firms with those as much anymore. So.
Okay, so you're just entrusting that Google has improved its processes so actually you don't have to go through that disavow process.
Yeah, I mean, I still proactively do it. I would definitely do it in a situation like what Matt said, where it's just kind of coming in overnight. It's easily detectable, but I do it a lot less than I ever have now. So.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Casey, back to the original question that's on the screen. What are the tactics that you see SEOs getting wrong the most with link building?
Sure. Well, before even like tactics, I think at first it's like a mindset. People get in the wrong mindset of, I need links because I need them, and I was told to, and that's what's going to make me look good. And you need to have a business decision behind whatever you do. So when I talk about things like maybe you should have a giveaway, I'm saying do that in the context of, yes, you're going to get links from it, but you're also going to collect email addresses, right? And you're going to use that for a completely different business marketing case. So the biggest mistake is really just doing it to do it. And then also getting links that people are never going to click, or aren't going to provide value, or getting it just because everybody else has it. So I think Matt already covered enough on the Fiverr and the automated link building stuff. That's the other big mistake people make. And then the last one is people just don't do it. They just get too intimidated. They think it's too hard, and they have analysis paralysis, and then they stop. So.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. No, I've definitely heard that from a few of our kind of customers before. Okay, let's go to the next question. And we have touched on this already. In case you can stay with you, when you're determining, how and where to build your links, how do you determine the quality or the value of potentially getting a link from a site? Oh, hang on, I've just messed that up. Hang on. Let me go back.
Sure. So, like that. Oh.
Go for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so there's a few different things that go into that, how to determine the quality or value of the link. But for me, it's this. It's number one, good links are links that are localized. So links that are within your locality, state, region, city, very specific. That's one metric we look at. Then we're looking at niche specific links. I think I already mentioned that a little bit earlier. If I'm working with a car accident lawyer, I might be looking at car clubs or bicycle accident lawyer, bicycle safety websites, things like that. Making sure that they're really niche related. And also on the niche related part, people use tactics like scholarship link building or whatever, and a lot of people might say that's overused, and it probably is. But if you can niche down into that too, where instead of being listed on a website that has every scholarship in the world, find out for us, it'd be law schools, now linked to your law firm website, right? So again, niche specific, and then links that earn the clicks. So if nobody's ever going to find it and click through to it, that's just another metric I would use. So I wouldn't pay attention really as much to domain authority, and you'll notice that score is way different than Ahrefs version or other providers as well, Majestic, TrustFlow, and whatnot. So don't pay as much attention to that, and just say, hey, is this a localized link? Is it in my niche? Is it going to get clicks? And is it going to add value to my business? Then yes. And then the last piece of information, if there's a million outgoing links on that page, I may not put a lot of effort into getting it.
Okay, great. Matt, does your sort of your kind of prioritization follow a similar path to Casey's?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the important notes is there that Casey notes is how domain authority and trust flow can be different across the different tools, and sometimes I feel like they can be gamed, or sometimes they're just heavily skewed based off of just inbound links and not necessarily the overall quality of the site or how the engines would perceive the quality of the site. So I think Casey hit it right on the head where he talks about how relevant is it and is it in the area. I think it's easy to get directory type citations and links. It's a little bit more difficult to get localized directory type citations and links, but then to get actually relevant links in your area and that's relevant to your business, I think those are going to be really quality. So like I mentioned earlier with the school example, even if the local high school's domain authority says it's a 12, as long as it's not hacked and sharing a bunch of pages about blue pills and knockoff purses, it's worth checking out and getting providing the value to your customers or their visitors that you're going to. And then I think it's nice to also determine the quality or the value of a link, not just when we're thinking of where we're going to place it, but once we've placed it, and then determining like what kind of engagement is coming through on that. Are people actually staying on it? Are people sharing it? Is it creating more links? Or more people seeing it there than based off of like your site in search? And then just kind of looking at the kind of your traditional KPIs just in terms of like engagement, like how many people are coming through here, how long are they staying, engaging, and converting.
Fine. So it's much deeper than just a kind of a domain authority assessment.
Absolutely, yeah.
We're looking at a whole kind of range of kind of metrics. Casey, you put local links, which obviously pass local information to kind of Google kind of indicators of locality above niche. Then is that because it's easier and there are more sort of local sites than there are niche sites, or do you find that actually it's more important from a ranking point of view or from an audience point of view to be local rather than niche?
I actually kind of put them equal, to be honest. And so in an ideal world, you get both of those. That would be where I'd put the most focus. But outside of that, yeah, either way, I would go either way on that.
Okay, great. Okay, guys, thank you for that. And then, by the way, guys, just a message from Fernando. He has been unfortunately scuppered by his sort of technical problems, so he won't be joining us today, which is a shame, but we will try and get him back onto another webinar in the future. Okay, so I guess these are questions about kind of KPIs, sort of link building, and how do you kind of balance these? And we've obviously kind of talked about this, so we'll kind of go through this kind of pretty quickly. If you had to say, you know what, my number one priority is direct traffic, clicks. Next priority is the authority it has, adds to my site. What would you say are the top 2 or 3 KPIs, and in what order? Matt, let's try and rank those with you, please.
Sure. So actually, I'm gonna take a step back and go back on what I talked about domain authority, because first off, if you've got opportunities to get something on the New York Times or the Washington Post, or something that's like domain authority 98, if you have those opportunities, obviously look for those. Those are going to be really high priority, just from a value like link equity aspect. But then I think moving down, I think I'd look at the overall, the value of the traffic, not necessarily traffic that's coming through because it's easy to spoof traffic, or it's, I want to see traffic that's actually doing something. So I think the quality of that traffic that's coming through is going to be really important. Obviously, link equity is the kind of the reason we're doing link building, but I think the engagement metrics could be helpful too.
Okay, and Casey?
Yeah, if I was going to simplify it, I would actually just say the engagement, because again, that link needs to provide a value, in my opinion, then more than just a link, and also building your brand, getting business and dollars into your door. So that's what I would look at first, and then everything else just falls behind that for that reason.
So the old sort of SEO kind of sort of intention or on link building to try and build authority actually really is much of a secondary, kind of tertiary concern for you these days. It's actually looking at how do you advance the business at its core, how do you build the brand and build value in that business, and if you can earn a link off the back of it, or if you can be rewarded the link off the back of it, then that's an additional bonus, but it's not your kind of sort of reason for doing link building.
Well, I mean, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, definitely, you kind of put me in a corner here, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely the goal. But I know from a tactical SEO standpoint, and just from everything that I do, that I know I need them as well. So I do work outside of that realm, but I just also wanted to preach what the ideal was.
Sure. Okay. As I take away this, it's it's a kind of complex scenario. You're not looking to just get authority. You're not looking to just build a brand. It's actually trying to find a sort of solution that delivers on all those kind of fronts. And sometimes you need authority, and sometimes you just want to kind of direct traffic. So I guess you've got to kind of weigh up the kind of needs of the business and the potential of each of the different sites. Matt, I've got a question for you actually, because you work with pretty large organizations. You mentioned the New York Times a second ago. Some of the organizations you work with must have pretty big brands and a kind of national footprint. So I guess you've got more potential than those clients to actually kind of get kind of mentions and links back from those kind of higher domain authority sites. So how do you go about sort of brand level sort of, I guess, kind of PR leading through to link building versus location level?
Yeah, so I think in instances like that, it's going back to working with the PR team, whether it's internal or it's an external agency. I think one of the favorite quotes is like the PR people are the OG link builders because they've been doing it right all these years. You know, they've been creating content using their contacts and then providing value with you know, something to the readers of like, you know, a magazine or a newspaper. So for example, one thing that a lot of the, you know, the big newspapers do, big, large and small newspapers, HuffPost, New York Times, and even like CNN.com, CNBC, any news outlet, you know, they do things, whether it's like, oh, free donuts on donut day. Here's where you get your free donut. So if you're, you know, a donut franchise, make sure that they know that you're giving out a free donut with the purchase of a coffee that day. That's the kind of thing that shows up all the time. Recently did some backlink auditing work during the migration in the coffee space, and saw that they had, you know, I think almost 60 links that were coming from websites 95 and up. And it was really cool to see, and you're like, oh, we're going to make sure that, you know, we don't lose these in the migration process. And throughout that, we were looking through the type of content, and that was the really big thing is, hey, you know, free mimosa on Mother's Day, or you know, free this or that on Father's Day. So these are all opportunities that, you know, people don't really think about all the time, but those are the types of things that people do share, whether it's going to be at the local level in the news space or at the national level. So I think those types of things are really helpful, and honestly, that's the kind of thing that people are going to pick up more than some other type of news story. One of the things that came up in actually this morning's SEM Rush chat on Twitter was that someone made a comment about that like journalists share stories, not content. And a lot of times when we talk about link building, we're like, okay, we're generating content because we want that content to create links for us or give us something that people want to link to. But for something that people want to share, for like journalists, for example, for some of these high domain authority type sites, these journalists are more interested in sharing a story and not just like, you know, some content piece that somebody created. And, you know, whether it's a feel-good piece or something controversial. I know Casey has a really good example of something he did a couple years ago with an attorney that garnered a lot of news attention for an attorney. So I don't know, Casey, if you want to mention that, but it doesn't always have to be a giveaway, but it can be, you know, something that's you're doing in the community or something that is maybe just a different thought process than what other people consider the norm, and creates a discussion, whether it's good or bad. It's at least it's bringing attention, and it's driving links, but also getting people talking about the brand as well.
Okay, interesting. The whole storytelling idea is it's kind of really interesting. It kind of takes it up another level from just kind of producing content with the sole purpose of trying to attract links. It's actually engaging the kind of editorial writers on these sort of sites with a story that they want to canvas. You've got to sell to them for them to kind of sort of promote you off the back of. It's an interesting way of sort of spinning that kind of mindset around kind of content creation. So Casey, what was this thing that you wrote about that was that Matt mentioned?
Which one is it, Matt?
Casey's the DUI attorney who was giving a sponsorship to high school students who admitted to drinking and driving.
Yeah, so we ran a PR campaign where exactly that, where we had basically high school students submit, you know, that they admitted to drinking and driving and pledge to not do it again. And the media blew up on that. You know, Wall Street Journal and a bunch of other local news media, national news media, some people thought it was ridiculous. Other people saw the good we were trying to do. But by creating that controversy, it was a story and it got picked up.
Yeah, that'd be pretty shocking. I can see why the kind of news outlets would jump on that. Okay, guys, let's go to a kind of tactical question now. Let's look at kind of outreach methods. Casey, what outreach methods you use that you think delivers the most cut through and most links for the effort invested?
Honestly, phone. So most SEOs, I think, were afraid to pick up the phone. I am, like personally. But I have a staff, and you know, we train them for these things, and just talking to people. We're also pretty jaded too. We're like, oh, nobody's going to post a link. Like I get 100 requests a day. A lot of people that run websites, if you're doing great things and you're asking for, you know, a legitimate placement, you pick up the phone, talk to them, build that rapport, boom, you got it.
Do you find you usually have to have more than one contact to end up resulting in that link?
Usually not. It depends on the site and how many people are involved. If you're talking about a school, it could be that there's one person that's managing, all of those student discounts or scholarships or whatever. In other cases, there's a bureaucracy, and that can definitely take more time, but it ends up being worth it. Just a little bit of persistence, because most people stop at that level too when they get that pushback.
So what is the sort of pushback you typically get, and how do you counter it?
Well, if they don't know, and then just, ask them if they could find out for you, tell them what you're trying to do, kind of explain your side of the story a little bit more. A lot of it's just about asking and not taking that, initial rejection.
Okay. Matt, when you're educating your multi-location kind of clients, do you give them a kind of playbook of kind of contact methods, and how do you rank those?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things is just the fact that like we have so many people all around the country who are in different areas, and it's really impossible for just our team to do it. But that's why we work together with them to do it. So from the training perspective, I think the number one thing is finding out how people like to communicate the best. Casey mentioned picking up the phone. I think it's a great way to open a line of communication directly. But then if that person decides, hey, email me this, then maybe I'll take the conversation online and just go via email. Or we've had great success via with journalists in the past where we follow them on Twitter and comment on things and build kind of like a rapport. And we look at their LinkedIn profile and see where they contribute content. So on LinkedIn, you find a piece that's relevant to your niche or where you're trying to go. You find someone who's writing about it. You follow them on LinkedIn. Maybe message them there and say, hey, I saw your piece here and I saw this other piece here, and you comment on it and you just kind of build that rapport, and then they're going to be a little bit more likely to open up that line of communication. Whether it's like, hey, let's schedule a 30-minute call, shoot me an email with the details, whatever. So I think it just kind of depends, just like any other answer in SEO, it always depends. But just opening up that line of communication and then going forward with their preferred, just to make it a little bit easier for them, because we don't want to, we don't want to be like pulling teeth, but if they're happy to communicate certain ways, then let's just go that way.
And when you say they, you're talking about the end business you're trying to build?
The end person, whether it's going to be a journalist at a news source, or it's going to be somebody who's in charge of social or content creation at a company and can actually get placement on the site.
And Casey, back to you, what is the least effective method of outreach where you just get such little end result?
Well, I think, initial emails, just sending out an email with no rapport building. Like basically, will you place, first contact email, will you place this link when you're doing outreach? But I just thought of one other nugget of information that I just wanted to mention, something that we've had a lot of success with that is successful. And that's taking advantage, if you know somebody that's been in PR, or you can find somebody that already has those connections, and asking them or paying them to use their professional services, to use their contacts to distribute your story. You'll get a lot of pickup, the relationship's already built, and it's just like no hassle.
So how does that work? So just talk me through that quickly.
Sure. So like, for example, I work with a PR person in San Francisco, and he's been in the media industry writing for different newspapers and things over the years. And so he just has all the media contacts. So I say, hey, in this case, I do want you to write a press release for us on this, but can you also reach out to all of your contacts and see if they'll write about this too? And that's just like explosive with little effort, finding somebody that already has the connections.
Okay, and then you're getting them to specifically write a PR release for you, knowing that they understand your niche, but also they've got a good set of contacts.
Exactly, and then it's not coming from me either. It's not coming from the person that wants it.
Interesting. So you've got a kind of a professional, trusted proxy that you're kind of going through. Also, Casey, a question for you. Sorry, Matt, just quick, Casey. When you're doing this on behalf of customers, and you said you've got a team that works for you, do they introduce themselves as working for Juris Digital, or do they say I'm working on behalf of X, Y, and Z, or I work for client X, Y, Z?
They always do it on behalf of the client. In an ideal situation, we do it from their email addresses, but honestly, we still get pickup pretty easily as long as we build that initial rapport through email or phone calls, even using Gmail addresses. So I wouldn't be that discouraged by trying that.
Okay, great. Sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, I was just going to add one more comment to Casey's comment on the PR aspect. One thing that I found is really helpful and interesting is, when these PR pieces go out, in many instances, it's nice just to have a couple places where it would be ideal to, that you're targeting, but like these PR releases go out to the world, But you have a couple targeted places where you'd like to go, and it's nice to kind of reach out to some of the people that might be covering that type of thing and provide additional information outside of just the press release. Because a lot of times, say there's a big move in like a company acquisition, and a generic press release goes out, and then every news source picks it up, and you read it at a couple of different places, and the comments and the wording are very similar because everyone's working off of the same document, right? So if you have the press release that goes out and it gets a little bit of pickup, that's great. But then if you do some outreach to some other people and provide some further details, then they're more likely to share that because they're offering a little bit more detail or different insight than what everybody else is getting. So then they feel special because you've given them something a little bit more valuable.
That's great. That's a very good idea to kind of sort of build that additional rapport, particularly those kind of, I guess, your high target people. Okay, I'm going to jump forward a question. When is actually link building just a waste of time or budget for a business? Casey, let's go back to you. Do you find that some clients it's just not a strategy you go and get into them for them, and why might that be the case?
Yeah, I mean, it's a waste of time or budget depending on their market typically. So if there's not, again, that competition, or if they don't have a solid strategy in place. If their goal is just to get more links for the purpose of getting more links, like that's not a project we would take on. We want to define specific KPIs for them. And then also, again, speaking about those, niches, if you're working in, veterans benefits laws and you take clients in just, your local area and there's no other law firms, you can probably just do the basics and you don't have to do any more than that because you're the only one that's going to come up in searches. So that's not the case with personal injury, of course, which a lot of my clients are. But yeah, I mean, I think those are the biggest wastes there.
Okay, so either when the strategy is not well founded or not sort of broad enough, or when actually the market is not that competitive because it's, I guess it's expensive and time consuming to build links, but if other things will move the needle, then focus on those first.
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Matt, how about for you? Do you ever find there's a scenario where the brand is just so big and dominant that actually you don't need to worry about link building strategies? You just do kind of brand, PR, and everything flows down from there.
Yeah, I think Google says that they understand that some of these bigger prominent brands actually, they understand what they do and they kind of dominate the space. But that's just kind of for generic type things. It doesn't always happen with localized search. So I think in an instance where it would be kind of a waste for like budget, like for wasting time or budget for local businesses, I would say that the building off of what Casey said, just not having a solid site. If you don't have any kind of like content strategy or optimizations that actually say what you're trying to target or where you are on your site, that's an issue. Or I've actually seen instances where a lot of sites just aren't, Google can't even see what's happening on their site, whether they have a lot of technical SEO issues, Google can't crawl it, Google can't understand it. That's not going to do you any good whether you or not you get links, I don't think. So I think making sure that the foundational aspects of your site are in order. So if they're not, I don't think it'd be worth spending time and budget link building to a site that's not, not accessible, not optimized, or not even like the basics in place. So I would say that's probably one of the bigger spots.
You also mentioned that in a scenario you had the other day where you were doing a migration. I'm assuming that was taking an old legacy site and moving on to a different CMS, for example, and sort of building out those pages again. How much time do you focus on analyzing the link profile to ensure that you don't damage that when you're doing that piece of work? And if you know that work is coming up, do you scale back on any kind of link building activities until the new site is in place?
Yeah, once we know that there's going to be a migration, in this instance, it was consolidating a retail subdomain with the main domain, and then everything was being switched over to PWA. So it was there's a lot of moving parts to it, and a lot of traffic, a lot of revenue, a lot of high value links pointing to that site. So the moment that we know something's going to happen, we actually kind of put a pause on any kind of new content, any kind of new outreach strategies. We just kind of put a pause on it. It's going to happen naturally. So we want to make sure that we're still taking that into account. But what we do is when we see all of these high value links in the backlink profile, we use that as kind of, all right, where are all of these links pointing to? And that helps us prioritize all of the pages that we're going to be redirecting, because on some of these bigger sites, it's really hard to, you're not going to want to manually go through and map out every single one. But for the ones where we know the really specific links are, we want to make sure that those are mapped out directly to the most relevant place, or hey, what type of content was that? We need to make sure that that content lives on the new site as well. So I think that just helps from a priority level on how we're going to be redirecting pages, because sometimes it's it goes to a page of some old promotion, but it's still a high value link, still drives traffic, people are still finding it. So just kind of figuring out where that's where that link equity is flowing and how we're going to pass that along to the new site.
Fine. Okay, that makes sense. So you're doing that through a redirect rather than going back out to the source of the link and getting them to change it. You're just doing a kind of a 301 redirect.
So we are doing the redirect, but we do take a look at those really high value ones and try to go back and do some outreach to get that link to go directly to the new URL. In many instances, we actually get some okay responses from that, but oftentimes it's like someone's either that author is no longer there, they don't know who to get a hold of to make that change. But it is helpful to get that link directly to go through to the new URL rather than going through the redirect. But one of the nice way to pose it is, hey, you've linked to this content, we are moving it to this location here. We would love for you to update it and send it here because it provides a more seamless transition. It's a better experience for your users. So don't do it from a, hey, this is better for the link quality of this link coming to my site. But if you push it from the perspective of a better experience for their users, they're more likely to pass it along to the right person or take care of it for you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, man. That's some great detail. I think we have our final question now because we're up to the hour. Casey, how do you cost up link building work, and then how do you pass that cost on to clients?
So if it was a sponsorship, we would just directly pass that on to them. But for our work, we're basically just doing a retainer and then amount of work using our defined processes within that. So we know about how much time that's going to take, and so that kind of boils down, to an hourly rate. Did I answer that question appropriately?
Yeah, you did. So then you just and you usually kind of bake it into the kind of overall retainer then, and then there's a portion, the section of time for it?
Correct, yeah. So it's not set one way or another, because when we're doing a free cab ride campaign, that's not every month. We're going to do a lot more work that month to promote the heck out of that, whereas on other months, we're going to be doing other types.
Fine, so you've got an allotment of hours you can spend on a client each month, and you just pick and choose how you direct those hours depending on what's happening seasonality-wise or sort of promotional-wise with that client.
Yep, and just depending on their goals, what are we trying to accomplish, and we'll laser focus that as best as we can.
Okay, great. Matt, when you're sort of, I'm not sure how this kind of works with your sort of model, but are you able to give us a sense of how you would handle this with your clients?
Sure. So it's actually very similar to Casey in terms of like retainer. So generally what we would do is we'll have either a broad SEO budget where we allocate time, a bucket of hours towards specific strategies and tactics based off of what's relevant to the client. Definitely don't want to we try to stay nimble in terms of, instead of setting up a bucket of hours where you get X amount of hours for this, X amount of hours for that, X amount of hours for this, we just kind of keep a broad bucket and then kind of map things based off of the strategies and the tactics when it's relevant for that time, or when things change, new goals come up, or things are constantly shifting, focuses change. Sometimes a new CMO, new CEO comes in and they want to start focusing on something else, and we say, hey, we want to be flexible and work together with them as a partner and help them achieve their goals that they're focusing on, rather than just saying, well, we said we deliver X amount of content, X amount of links every month. So we try to be more of a beneficial partner rather than just someone who's very stuck within the guidelines of what you could see in a set contract like that.
Okay, great. Guys, that was fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's kind of wrap things up now. Just for those of you who want to go and do a little bit more reading about kind of link building for local businesses, I'd like to point in the direction of a study, sort of survey we did, which was there were about 20 local experts involved in this. We asked them a series of questions about the tactics and the approaches they use to kind of build links. I think we did this back in around March or February of this year, and it's got some really good sort of insights. It's more kind of quantitative than the qualitative stuff that Casey and Matt have been kind of giving us today. But if you've got sort of 15, 20 minutes, please go over there. It's got some really useful kind of information, stats to back up a lot of what kind of Casey and Matt have been talking about. And of course, if you feel like linking to it, please do. Guys, it's been wonderful having you on. Thank you very much for that. I've learned a lot. I know the roundup and the wrap up of this is going to be fantastic. If people haven't been able to stay to the end, I'm sure they'll kind of come back and listen to the full thing. So, guys, I don't want to take up any more of your time, but thank you very much on behalf of the team here at BrightLocal, but also everyone who's listened in. It's been really, really interesting, and I hope we can entice you back onto InsideLocal again at some point in the future.